Welcome to all our viewers. My name is Randy Brown. I am the Supplier Diversity Manager for Emory University, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Again, we have a fabulous panel that will address the audience shortly and let you know we will have questions that will be collected via Q&A button that you have, and we will get to as many as we can by the end of the hour. Finally, this event is being recorded. And now, please welcome President Finvez, who will share opening remarks.
All right, thank you, Randy, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us on this final event of this year's MLK Lecture Series on Economic Empowerment and Inclusion. Today, our focus will be on how Emory University is working to provide access and expand opportunity for diverse businesses throughout Metro Atlanta. You're going to hear about Emory's programs and partnerships that are anchored in our commitment to serve and strengthen our communities that we call our home. From procurement strategies and efforts to connect entrepreneurs with much needed resources, to mentoring small businesses, many of whom are struggling in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disproportionately affected African Americans and persons of color. And while navigating this pandemic has presented extraordinary challenges for everyone, minority-owned businesses have been hit particularly hard. The U.S. Small Business Administration found that by last August, Black-owned businesses had nearly 3 times the decline in business activity as their white counterparts. But as always, Black History Month invites us to reflect upon the many significant contributions and achievements of African Americans in shaping our nation's history, especially here in Atlanta, but as well as the hard-fought struggles and barriers that still exist today to progress, barriers that are unfortunately alive and well today. Black History Month also includes the story of Black economic empowerment, both the challenges of achieving it and the powerful ongoing role it plays in driving growth for our communities and our economy. Beyond his campaigns for civil rights and voting rights, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s fight for social justice included the goal of economic empowerment. During the famous 1963 March on Washington, part of his historic message was a call to end economic inequality, what some have called Dr. King's other dream. And we know here in Atlanta, that dream is still unfulfilled. But at Emory, we are committed to supporting the ability of everyone to flourish and thrive in what Dr. King called the sunlight of opportunity. And in striving to create these opportunities, we are in turn strengthening our community partnerships. And this includes projects that you'll hear about today, such as Emory's Start Me program, transformational business accelerator that has already served more than 200 regional small businesses, a vast majority of which are led by women and African Americans. At Emory, we've come a long way in strengthening our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there is still much more work for us to accomplish at every level. And today's panel is an opportunity to learn, to discuss, and to develop new ideas and strategies as we move towards a university united and committed to lasting progress on campus and in Atlanta. So now I'm very pleased to turn over the program to our panelists, which include Kevin Nash, Chief Procurement Officer, Erin Engelhardt, Program Director for Start Me, and Dr. Candy Tate, Assistant Director for Emory's College Center for Creativity and the Arts. Thank you.
I want to thank you, President Finvez, for supporting economic diversity at Emory. We appreciate it. And right now, I'd like to do a brief introduction of our panelists. We'll go in this order. Scott, if you'll go first, please, and then Erin, and then Candy.
My name is Scott Schachter. I'm Director of Contract Administration for Emory Procurement. Unfortunately, Kevin Nash is not able to be here today, so I'm representing the procurement organization. The procurement organization is the central point of coordination for sourcing and contracting, travel, accounts payable, and most relevant here, supplier diversity. And Emory has a fairly decentralized structure where schools and business units select and manage their own suppliers to a good extent. However, central procurement's role does include partnering with schools and business units on larger sourcing initiatives, providing tools and processes and expert resources. An example of this is the enterprise coordination and leadership on supplier diversity, and of course, establishing standards and policies that guide how sourcing and contracting is performed.
Thank you, Scott.
Hi, my name is Erin Aglehart. I'm the program director for the Start Me Accelerator. Start Me is an intensive 3-month accelerator for micro businesses, connecting entrepreneurs to the business know-how, networks, and capital to build and grow successful businesses. We're place-based, meaning we work in specific communities in Atlanta, and our work is really all around connection. In each case, Emory's Goizueta Business School partners with trusted local nonprofits to tailor a program to local entrepreneurs. So we work with the Eastlake Foundation serving Eastlake to Edgewood, Friends of Refugees serving the Clarkston, Stone Mountain, Tucker area, and Focused Community Strategies and Purpose-Built Schools Atlanta serving Atlanta's broader South Side. And then we build a broader coalition of other nonprofits, social enterprises, business associations, neighborhood associations to really help us connect with and support entrepreneurs. We engage a wide number of volunteers, including 75 mentors across our 3 programs to really work hand in hand with entrepreneurs. And really all of that is around building connections to support the strength and vibrancy of businesses that bring strength and vibrancy to our local communities. The program initially grew out of research that my colleague, Dr. Peter Roberts, conducts at Goizueta, looking at the differences between zip codes across the US. One thing he found is a really significant gap of 30% or more in the number of micro businesses per capita in what you might call underserved communities. And that directly translates to fewer people starting and operating businesses, opening storefronts, employing people, and serving local needs. We know that entrepreneurs, whether they're starting the next high growth tech company or a mom and pop, really need knowledge networks and capital in order to be successful. So we build local accelerator programs that complement and feed into the broader small business ecosystem by connecting those to entrepreneurs. We've worked with just over 300 local micro businesses here in Atlanta. 84% of those are led by people of color, and 72% are female led. And they really do everything from farming to fashion, furniture to food, and everything in between. And individually, they're all micro, but collectively, they have a really significant impact in our communities. So they generate over $12 million in annual sales. They employ about 600 people in addition to the founders, and they operate 40 stores and offices in our communities.
Thank you, Aaron. Next will be Ms. Candy Tate.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Gracianise Candy Tate. I'm the Assistant Director for the Center for Creativity and Arts at Emory, which was founded in 2008. And I'm also an Emory alum in art history. The Center for Creativity and Arts is an advocate for the arts on campus and in the community writ large. We have an annual Arts Leadership Award that we give out. And we also have an Arts Passport program for students to allow them to go to ticketed events on campus and in the community. Our grants program gives funding for faculty, staff, and students who have creative projects. And we're very excited about our Out There Arts program, which partners with local arts agencies to get students and their faculty out of the Emory bubble, as we call it, and out into the community.
Thank you, Candy. We greatly appreciate it. So we're going to start off with some questions. But before that, for some reason, I just felt the need a little icebreaker. And I wanted to ask you guys a question due to COVID. Let's answer in the same order. And feel free to answer this question. If you have one food that you will never eat again after COVID is ended, what would that food be? So we'll start with Scott.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I have some issues getting the video back on. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, food hasn't been an issue during COVID. Nothing we've been particularly bunker eating. Sorry.
Scott. Aaron, what about you?
I I have 2 toddlers at home, so probably any kind of toddler finger food.
Okay. I'm just thinking of toddler food. All right. And what about you, Candy?
And Randy, you know, with a name like Candy, jelly beans are my go-to,
Oh my
the gourmet
God.
jelly beans.
That's great. If I had to say one, I would almost say pizza, but I love pizza too much to say that I would not want pizza anymore. So I'll probably go with anything that is not good for me at this point. So I'll just say that anything not healthy. So we'll start off with our questions, and we'll start in the same order. But this first question is for Scott. So Scott, basically, can you share some efforts underway in strategic procurement to create access to opportunity to do business with him?
Absolutely. So I mentioned at the outset, the role of supplier diversity in the central procurement organization is to lead and coordinate. So 2 important activities that are taking place under your leadership, Randy, are being more active in engaging suppliers in our community. So that started with GMSDC. We actually had an event today where we talked to at least a dozen different potential vendors and are looking forward to moving forward with those discussions and potential engagement. But we're also looking to engage other agencies, including but not limited to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Women's Business Council, and the Atlanta Wealth Builders. When engaging suppliers in the community, we have 2 primary objectives: identifying and qualifying suppliers who might have goods or services that Emory can utilize, and providing guidance and coaching to potential suppliers regarding how to do business with Emory and at Emory. So we also are creating targeted areas where we believe there's an opportunity to increase our spend with diverse suppliers, starting with identifying those areas. Emory University spends hundreds of millions of dollars every year in a large variety of areas, ranging from COVID-19 testing equipment, personal protective equipment, food services, and the list goes on and on and on. Because the variety is so large, we plan to target some spend areas we believe have the greatest opportunity to utilize diverse suppliers, not by means of limitation, just as a matter of focus. And then in these targeted areas, what we intend to do is utilizing new technology, understand which organizations in Emory are spending money in these targeted areas, which will enable us to partner with them and coordinate the activity across Emory. It's also going to help us better understand what diverse suppliers are currently in place so we can determine if the relationship can grow. We're also going to partner with the Emory organizations to find more creative ways to provide opportunity for diverse suppliers. So 2 examples of that creative thinking. One, many times the scope of work needed by Emory is too large for a small and diverse supplier, frankly, for any small supplier. So they opt not to participate in RFP events. Being more creative, we're looking at the scopes of work to determine if it can be partitioned into smaller scopes of work that would enable more firms to be considered, or potentially as a tier 2 as a second alternative. We're also planning to utilize the enhanced functionality in our electronic shopping tool with Amazon. There's new functionality there that's going to enable us to prioritize diverse and local suppliers.
Scott, that's great. Glad to see at least I'm doing something that moving in the right direction. So
Absolutely.
Next question is for Aaron. Aaron, can you share how the business school is engaging in projects to help entrepreneurs gain access to the resources they need to thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start by saying that I've really enjoyed the other economic and inclusion events, and many of the same challenges and opportunities that they talked about drive a lot of the work that goes on within the business school as well. So Ryan from the Gathering Spot talked about how COVID has really laid bare longstanding structural issues that inhibit particularly Black-owned businesses from starting and scaling, and there's so much opportunity to intentionally build diversity into how you operate, what you buy, who you hire, the suppliers that you seek out. Joey from Goody Nation talked about how community is key. And this is especially true in a city like Atlanta with strong concentrations of entrepreneurs and great mentors. With Start Me, we try to lay strong foundations for Atlanta area micro businesses. Similarly, other programs within Goizueta, such as Grounds for Empowerment that connects female coffee growers at origin to business knowledge and market connections, and the newly launched Roberto C. Goizueta Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which really supports entrepreneurial students and alumni and fosters connections with the investor community, really driving innovation in kind of the broader Southeast, have a very similar focus in addressing some of those longstanding challenges, but also seeing that as a fantastic opportunity to really lean into and create prosperity for others. We recognize that connections to peer entrepreneurs are really critical, and that's a consistent theme across those various programs, as well as other efforts that we see within the business school. And that really allows for collaboration, support, insight, and learnings. And frankly, entrepreneurship can be personally and economically really empowering, but it can also be really lonely. And so it's important to build the networks that help people endure through challenging times as well. Connections to mentors and professional services are just essential. Working with micro businesses, many times these ventures are run by solopreneurs or maybe a couple of partners, and no one is an expert in all things. And so it's really important to have people to bounce ideas off of, and those with deep knowledge who can really guide you in the right direction. And then finally, we definitely recognize that Atlanta is a big, complex ecosystem that we are one piece of. And as a business school and a university, we really try to be positive contributors to that broader effort. So that includes being thoughtful about the research, coursework, and fieldwork that we do, but also being good team players, celebrating the work that other people are doing, building connections across geographies and industries, and building procurement channels that really include that broader ecosystem as well.
Appreciate that, Erin. And just to remind everyone, you go to Q&A to basically ask questions. If you have questions concerning our panelists or questions concerning myself as well. I will say, Erin, it's great to hear that, especially considering the fact, one, I work in two areas of Emory, which is supplier diversity and inclusion, but also on government contracts. And a lot of those government contracts deal with small businesses to help research that we're currently doing with Emory uses with the government. And it allows us to have the opportunity to grow those businesses as we continue to do those contracts with similar services. So definitely appreciate that. Moving forward, I wanted to ask you a question, Candy. Can you share some efforts and connections we are making with arts organizations, as well as your work as an alumni in the MLK corridor?
Certainly, Randy, I'd be happy to. Excited to share that the arts at Emory reach out to the community on a regular basis. And just recently, earlier this month, we worked with Bronze Lens Film Festival to do a tribute for the late Pella McDaniels, which allowed us again to share audiences and resources. Last fall, we actually, the tile behind me shares the Art and Social Justice Fellowship Program, Fellows, which is a partnership with the Ethics Center here on campus. And we were able to hire 6 fellows, two painters, 2 actors, a cellist, and an arts administrator that worked with 6 faculty members and over 100 students to really expose them to the subject matter that they were interested in and how art and activism work in modern day, lives in the world. And so I invite those who are listening and interested to visit emoryasj.org for more information on that project, because we'll also, we're looking this summer to hire, to put out a call for artists for our next cohort of fellows. But on a personal level, I'm a native of Atlanta. And so it was so nice to hear President Finbez, share Martin Luther King, our native son's vision for a beloved community. And that beloved community to me starts with Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. And so what I've done is, as an art historian and interest in this area, have worked with historic preservation. I'm on the board for the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation, Historic Atlanta, ASALA. So these multiple organizations have been working in the community. And I, as a grant writer, have been able to garner over $1 million in federal funding for Fountain Hall, which is one of the historic buildings on now Morris Brown's campus, formerly Atlanta University. But this 1882 building is the centerpiece of Black education coming out of emancipation. And so it needs to be restored. And my mantra really has been, you know, historic preservation is economic development. So along that corridor from downtown and the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, if we come down the MLK corridor, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, I have been working with Reverend Winston Taylor and the Beloved Community on the 960 building, and have actually talked with Aaron and the cohorts at the Guazetta Business School about possibly doing what they're helping in South Atlanta to help business owners on the MLK corridor. So we have just begun initial conversations. We would love to work with you and see if we can get some government grants to help fund it. But again, the history of that building is that the late Senator Leroy Johnson had his law office there. So he was the first Black senator after Reconstruction in Georgia. And Major Lance, who's a R&B singer, Keisha Lance Bottoms, our mayor's father, practiced in that building. So there are all kinds of great stories up and down the corridor that we have to elevate for past businesses and present businesses. And then lastly, on the Places in Peril for this year, I was able to put the MLK at 925, the Atlanta Business League's Ashby Street Theater building on the Places in Peril. It opened up in 1934 as a segregated theater. And so we've been working with Matthew Bernstein in the Film Studies Department and other, the Morehouse's Film Department and others to see where we can bring resources to bear to restore that landmark. So all of those are, and when you bring grant dollars to the neighborhood, that's jobs that are going to help, restore the buildings and to bring vibrancy back to the community. So these are some things that we are doing and some things that, I hope to do with Emory in the MLK corridor.
First of all, I appreciate your work. And ironically enough, I was actually at Auburn Avenue Market this weekend with some friends. We were looking for a restaurant my friend owns down there. Don't want to publicize it. I'd love to, but I'm not sure if I have that option. But it's in the market, but it was great. So I can see how the revitalization is coming around there. And I just love the fact of how it's coming about, especially one that's been in Atlanta and worked downtown for over 20 plus years. So that being said, we're going to move forward to another question. This will be for all of you guys. We'll go in the order: Scott, Aaron, then Candy. Feel free to take your time. But again, for our guest, feel free to put a question in if you have one. We're looking forward to taking it and more than happy to answer it. So the question is this: we're currently in the midst of the COVID pandemic, which has disproportionately impacted communities of color. What are some new and innovative ways that you have worked with in the small business region to help?
So one of the initiatives Procurement supported was with the Emory Rollins School of Public Health when they went in the community to provide COVID-19 testing and other services. It was Procurement's role to make sure that all the supplies were available, including masks, gowns, gloves, etc. The pandemic's put a strain on the global supply for all the personal protective equipment supplies. So it was critical these supplies were appropriately prioritized and made available for this initiative. I think I've also seen similar initiatives of the nature from the School of Nursing and School of Medicine. And again, we're providing the procurement support, supply chain support for them that in turn enables them to get out to the community and to do that good work. Other ways we've supported small businesses are buying supplies that we've used in our COVID testing activity. So Omni International Tubes at the COVID collection sites is a local veteran-owned small business in Marietta. Salimetrics, the saliva collection aids at our COVID collection sites, is another small business, I believe diverse small business. Spectrum Chemicals for lab supplies is a small woman-owned business. Clean It Supplies, another small business we engaged through Amazon. I believe there's a couple of others.
Thank you, Scott. Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you. I think this past year has really demonstrated the value of local small businesses that can identify and quickly adapt to local needs. And it kind of goes without saying that this year has also been challenging on so many fronts. At the end of the day, businesses are run by people, and many of them are facing a number of compounding challenges. Looking just at our Start Me alumni community, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, we saw about 3/4 of our alumni cut hours or close. About 3/4 experienced a significant drop in sales, about half let go of employees or contractors, and about 2/3 required emergency funding in the form of grants or loans. And this wasn't the case for all alums. Some were well positioned to thrive. Others were able to use a furlough or a layoff from a 9 to 5 as an opportunity to dive into a side business full time. Others have embraced new ways of connecting with customers, but it's true of a lot of them, and it's not unique to our alumni community by any means. As a program, we have moved from place-based, gathering closely in community centers and schools, to fully virtual. And on the surface, that doesn't seem ideal for a program focused on literally bringing people together and building connections. But there are some elements of it that are actually really nice. Geography is less of an impediment. So we've been able to pull in mentors and experts from a wider area. We've also been able to serve entrepreneurs who might have been hard pressed to attend in person, whether they're caregivers, lack transportation, for example. We've been able to work closely with the instructional design and academic media services teams to really transcribe rather than translate content to a virtual environment. So that means we've really captured the essence of what we would have covered in person. And we've been able to create videos that feature a wide range of diverse speakers that endure beyond this year, along with punchier, more interactive content that we can do more readily via Zoom. And while the year has been hard for a lot of people, it's also created opportunities for them to pause and invest in themselves, their knowledge, their businesses, their networks. So we are seeing some people kind of take a leap and build businesses that might have stayed a dream or a side hustle otherwise. For ventures in our current cohort and our broader alumni community, we've found several ways to provide direct or indirect support to support them throughout this time. So we've been able to connect people to new and evolving financial resources. That's through CDFIs, local banks, local and national grant programs. We've been able to connect entrepreneurs with some strategic procurement opportunities. For example, connecting local electricians in our network in with the Emory facilities management team, kind of matching a skill set to a need. We offer virtual group mental health sessions, so really trying to offer a safe space guided by a local therapist for entrepreneurs to vent and share and work together on good coping strategies. And it's difficult to run a virtual business without access to a good computer and a solid internet connection. So with local partners, we've been able to grant laptops and provide financial support for connectivity to help bridge some of that divide and help people shift their model and the ways that they operate. And we're trying to pilot new things. So things like, professional services consulting, where we connect entrepreneurs with local experts, many of whom are local small business owners themselves, sort of connecting skill sets and driving business in their direction as well. As conditions start to hopefully normalize this year, I'm hopeful that many of the ventures will rebound, and I do think that many of them will be able to propel beyond where they were before. I think a lot of the good that we've put in place in response to COVID will remain, but there's definitely a lot of work to be done, and a lot of that is brought on by the pandemic, but a lot of that is structural, and it'll require consistent action and intention in order to really be thoughtful about how we move forward in a good direction.
Aaron, thank you. It sounds like you guys are really impacting the community. We greatly appreciate the work you're doing, especially as you work with Emory alum as well. Candy?
In the arts, our efforts have changed, as you say, with the dance analogy. We've learned to pivot in that if we look at last June, during Juneteenth, we worked with a local muralist, and we're over in the Carver neighborhood market when the Wendy's incident happened, and the burning and the shooting, but the neighborhood broke out the Carver Market's windows, and had to be boarded up. We had to gather volunteers to come in and help board up these windows, but you had basically a blank canvas. So we brought in an artist along with our alum, Dr. Fahamu Peku, and designed a kind of a paint by numbers where we engaged volunteers from the focus communities strategies at the neighborhood market, and had a beautiful mural. And then when the glass that was ordered came in, those murals were then moved, the plywood was moved to another building that they have in their kind of rotation to be restored. So it was nice to see the paintings repurposed. But again, all of this, if you can help buy the art supplies, help employ an artist, or again, putting money into the community, and Emory's presence is seen there. We're also working with artist Charmaine Minifield on a Praise House project, which we hope, and we've written an NEA grant for, which will involve the Carlos Museum, DeKalb County, and its centennial celebration next year. And then again, after having worked in South Atlanta, we reached out to Southview Cemetery, and they're interested. So this idea of having this public art piece that will engage the community on history and neighborhood, but the grant monies will help build the house, have tours, and again, hopefully get visitors to come out. That's going to then spur on needing to buy lunch and all of the things that arts help with economic development wherever they are. And I will add that the arts on campus and the Short Center, next to going to the hospital, the arts are the second most visited reason for coming to campus. So we're always proud of that. And lastly, I would share something that the arts are doing is, again, as Aaron mentioned, we're having to go virtual. And so we've been able to partner with True Colors Theater, Morehouse King Collection for an upcoming program, March 7th, which is the anniversary of Bloody Sunday. But what's exciting is because of this virtual environment, the Lincoln Center reached out to us. So here's somewhere where we would not have normally shown a film or been able to do something with an artist out of state. We're going to be able to show and have him on panel, Carl Rux, and his visual poem honoring John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, and then have panelists on a virtual platform to engage the community and understanding. And what was important to us is not just to have the artists perform, but we're also offering honoraria. So we're paying the artists for their work, which is very important during these COVID times.
That's great. It's funny you mentioned True Colors. I think the last time I went to a play was the True Colors play at Southwest Art Center. And I guess I'll say this, that a lot of us think of it from our kids. How can we have them have virtual experiences and experiencing that now? And it's really difficult, but glad to see that everything is kind of adapting to the environment that we have. So
right. And my last COVID or pre-COVID experience was going to the Atlanta Opera to see Porgy and Bess. So I'm like, I can't wait to get back to see live theater. So yeah, as we all are, I'm sure, wherever it is.
That's true. That's true. So I want to ask you guys another question, but I want to do, and this is a question I had. So related to COVID, but we talk a little bit about it. How is technology you feel has helped and maybe hindered, as you led to in some of your discussions, Aaron, and effectively continuing to be able to work through the pandemic and helping from an economic standpoint? And Scott, I know that we work together on technology, trying to be able to allow vendors to be able to adapt. So I'll let you elaborate a little bit on that, but just wanted to ask that question because it has become a new normal for us, the amount of technology we're using now. So. And Scott, I'll let you go first, then Aaron, then Candy.
Okay. Yeah. So, as you well know, Randy, since you're helping to lead the effort and spearheading it, part of the problem is there's so many, small business, startup business, that it's difficult for us to necessarily go out to find them. And at the moment, unfortunately, Emory's not really set up in a great position to take their information and to be able to handle it. And so, as you're helping us try to get to a point of improving our website so that the small business, the startup business, and the diverse business can come to us, put in their information, we can match it up to the right people internally to go to, that, where there might be a fit, we can get additional information, and it helps to have that two-way communication and to enable. And, I think we would have gotten there anyway. I think COVID has helped press us more on the need for the technology to help enable that.
Yeah, and just to elaborate, Scott, you're absolutely right. I think that what's important is the fact is that we are focused on helping them, but we're trying to use technology because some of those vendors don't really have the means to understand how to handle transaction fees when it comes to dealing with Emory from that standpoint. So we talked about being able to adapt for them, but also trying to figure out a way to allow them to grow in that process as well through technology, so they're not limited. And next, Aaron, what about you?
Technology, I guess it's a help and a hindrance at the same time. On the hindrance side, there's a huge digital divide. So we see that in access to laptops and really good accessible smartphones. We also see that with a good internet connection. And then on top of that, comfort using various platforms, comfort using social media, comfort really jumping into video or virtual engagement. It was very noticeable early on in the pandemic. And I think, whether they wanted to or not, I think a lot of people have made great strides. So I think some people really jumped into it, others that we've sort of dragged along over the course of the year. And so I think while people struggled with it initially, I'm really starting to see people embrace that as an opportunity. There are so many platforms out there that you can use that, frankly, picking one is almost the hardest part. But you can kind of cobble together what you need. And so, we've really had to embrace technology in terms of creating videos for content, in terms of sharing materials, in terms of allowing for a safe way to still gather in an interactive way. But we found that, while people are maybe a little hesitant when you first present it to them, they quickly embrace whatever you're giving to them. Because I think that people are really eager for ways to connect, ways to work together, ways to support one another. And then, entrepreneurs are innovative. And so they figure it out. They've figured out really good ways to connect. So I think where we're able to help bridge that digital divide and in connecting people to resources, we're able to then sort of catapult them forward in terms of what they're able to do technologically for their businesses, and then, for connecting with others in their broader network.
Thank you. And Candy?
Well, of course, the arts can't be far behind. And what we found is that we went from not being able to live stream in the Short Center to in our other public spaces, to really having to make that financial commitment to put that technology into one space where each, the dance, theater, music departments may have their own spaces that they control. We couldn't at this point afford to put it in every one. So now we have it in the Short Center and having to book using the space at, as it's available. Also with the, obviously with, there was a time when we didn't know what Zoom was, so to now we know it all too well and are Zoom fatigued. But each of the arts is, is kind of taking it in stride and, and making the best of a bad situation, because of course our first choice is to be live, and we live for an audience, live for you coming to an exhibit, to a performance, talking back. But this technology again allows us to connect to audiences that we may not have, that may not be able to come into the physical space. And we remember the days of traffic around the Emory community. And so now you just need to, make sure you have your link and able to log in. So we're excited, and some of this will continue post-COVID, and we'll make the best of a combination, a hybrid of both environments.
Just Zoom when I was growing up was a TV show. That dates you right there. So I have a question from the audience. I want to start with it, and then it basically is this. They're a Gwinnett alum, and they appreciate Emory's role in supporting small businesses and diverse businesses. When it comes to diversity procurement, the focus is often established on small businesses. Can you please speak to Emory's role in supporting minority-owned business, startup, and then the startup community? So we can go in the same order. I'll just say continue that, and I'll add something to it at the end. So.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I mean, this is part of the drive behind the website to be able to take data in. Part of our drive during COVID is to recognize the economic situation that especially startup businesses are in, and to be cognizant of that. So, we do have, I wouldn't call them established yet, and probably closer to startup businesses that are providing food service at specific locations on the Emory campus, things of that nature. And because we know we have less people on campus, the business proposition is not what it was when they engaged with us. So we're reworking economics to be cognizant of this economic situation they're in to try to be helpful. We definitely understand that Emory and the community thrive. The more small and diverse businesses there are, and the more they succeed, including the startups. We're doing everything we can to connect with them and to connect them to business, because we know that there's a lot of business internally that can be met. And yeah, I'll turn it back to you, but I
kind of feel that, so I want to focus on planning, design, and construction, because they're basically
yes
initiative right now that we're really pushing. And, looking at general contractors, people that can do renovation projects at Emory, but their real focus is working with MBEs and WBEs locally on projects, so they can basically increase that area, because there's a lot of startups in that area, even looking at 2-tier. So I know that they're definitely focused on it. And I'm sure that it's something, as we continue to move forward, we'll continue to help out entrepreneurs. But it goes back to the discussion that Aaron mentioned that we had the week before. A lot of startups were included in those discussions with the Gathering Spot and Rice. So I just think that we basically have the ability, as Emory being one of the largest employers in Atlanta, but also having an economic impact of $9.26 billion, that we're focused on making sure the metro area in Atlanta is basically we're involved with. So, Aaron?
So it's a good question, and I don't know that I have the exact answer that they're looking for, but I guess what I would say is it goes back to connection. So that's making introductions, that's encouraging people to get the certifications that they need in order to make their businesses well aligned to do business with large procurement organizations like Emory, and they have a vast number of universities within the city, and connecting internally to brainstorm new and existing ways to build. We as a small group try to really practice what we preach. So that means sourcing from local small businesses, startup and more established, and really trying our best to build that into the university structure. I also think there's, in a way, COVID gives us a little bit of a time to pause and reflect. And that doesn't mean to do nothing. What that means is to figure out exactly where you are, start where you are, and set really ambitious goals for where you want to go. And then really start to be thoughtful about how you do that, what your indicators are going to be, and how you're really going to act on that. And so, as it goes back to the specific question about supporting startups, I think that startups need to be part of that small business intention. And I think that, putting the structures and frameworks in place to help them thrive, but then fostering the connections and opportunities for them to really connect with those who make decisions is really where Emory is going, and the role that we can play.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. Yeah, I know that your organization is definitely working hard to make sure, especially with the startup program, but to make sure that to try to reach out and do whatever we can, especially the locations you work in. I think Clarkston, West End. I'm not sure the other third location, Decatur, is that it? But I know that you guys are definitely focused on areas, so I appreciate it. Candy, how about you?
Yeah, and it doesn't so much connect with the arts, but then it does. And as I think about it, you know, when you're doing Zoom productions, you know, you need, you know, the arts. You need someone to put your run of show together. You need to be thinking about lighting. You know, all of these are aspects of putting, you know, our best face forward on this virtual environment. And even to the point of, you know, I've had folks say that they take theater classes on how to, you know, so you know how to present appropriately. And so the arts are involved in more ways than you know to your background screen. But, you know, as we think about it and what I do, you know, as a, you know, as an alum and working in, you know, various organizations in the community, is I've always got Emory at my heart, thinking about where I can make the connections with someone in the community to come on campus, and certainly where Emory can go out into Atlanta. So those are things that we all have to be cognizant of as, you know, as staff on campus.
Yeah, it's I think about that as well, especially when you think of the when I saw the cat video for the meme for the Zoom call. I think there are do's and don'ts that you learn, but I also think about how in sports, how you have to take certain classes to learn how to speak as you become a more of vocal athlete or politician. So definitely it resonates in that way. So as we are going in to wrap up, I want to ask a question of you guys all and just want to make sure that I answer it correctly. So for Aaron and Candy, this is for you. How can students get involved with the efforts like this to help create opportunities to partner with Emory? And just to segue that, include alum in that same as well.
Andy, would you like to go first this time?
There we go. If I can only get my mic to cut on. But yeah, I'll go first. And as we think about how students, alums can be involved in all the work that we do, you know, it's about getting connected through the, you know, the Alumni Association, most importantly, and also being a resource for students on campus, you know, during career day and those sorts of activities. And then students certainly letting us know what their skill sets are, you know, so there are things that they know and things that they need to know. And so how we can mentor students along the way is always going to be what a university is, you know, is best at doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Aaron?
So we engage a lot of alums in particular. We recruit about 75 to 80 mentors, and they're really engaged week in and week out throughout a 3-month program, and then throughout the rest of the year as well. And we have a lot of returning mentors, many of whom are graduates of Emory undergrad and or grad programs. We also bring in lawyers and lenders and focus group providers. So we really need people in and around the community who are passionate about this community. And I think that's one thing that the Emory alumni and student community really bring, is a lot of that passion and enthusiasm. Students, we do generally involved in a lot of our key sessions. They're great in front of the scenes, if you will, and behind the scenes. So we oftentimes leverage Quizweta students to help us with some of the coordination and planning for executing some of our more complicated sessions. But they also oftentimes step in as feedback providers, really engaging with local businesses and sharing their insights and perspectives. And then we also work closely with a student-led group called the Emory Impact Investing Group. They provide microloans to entrepreneurs, specifically micro businesses led by entrepreneurs. And so they've actually supported a number of our entrepreneurs, allowing them to invest in strategic inventory to invest in equipment and really kind of launch or scale a business.
That's great. Just to hear how we're investing back in the sense of capital. And Scott, I wanted to ask you a question as we go forward. Not the same as theirs, so it'll be different, but just share some efforts from a long-term perspective. We talked about what we're developing. I know that I can speak to it too, but just what we're developing, and then other areas that we are exploring but have yet been developed, and being creative in that way. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we've covered it. I mean, it covers from a couple of different dimensions. So one is concentrating on given areas. So like the School of Nursing, we have an initiative looking at their spend and trying to identify current and increasing diverse spend. Carter Center's another. You already talked about with campus services, and construction is a big area, both for tier 1 as well as making sure that in turn our vendors have the same commitment we do. And what we can't get tier 1, we get tier 2. So at least the spend is getting there. For the very smallest and most nascent of diverse providers, just individuals, we contract with a ton of independent contractors on a regular basis. And so, going back to that question a little bit, absolutely that would be the first place to start. If you're just an individual and you have a good or service, more likely in that case a service, but to sell. If there's somebody at Emory that has that need, we can potentially, make that happen. You don't have to be even a company or large. Kind of the sky's the limit. Part of the problem is that even from a basic procurement perspective, we're still kind of building infrastructure, but, we are building it from the ground up with diversity at its center. We're building our spend analytics. We're building our tools where one of the first considerations is how is this going to help us to identify and expand diversity spend. So.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. I just know this, that as I think about our program, I think about the mission of Emory University to create, preserve, teach, and apply knowledge in the service of humanity, and how we're basically doing that as a whole through these areas. So as we begin to wrap up, I just want to ask you guys, if you would individually start with Scott. Actually, let's go backwards. Let's start with Candy. Aaron, you're not going to be in the middle. I'll go to Scott, and then we'll let you be last. If you would please just share how people can connect with you via office, or how they would be able to do that as we go forward if they want to reach out to discuss anything further.
Certainly, our web address for creativity and arts at Emory is arts.emory.edu.
Great. How about you, Scott?
Yeah, so unfortunately, since that website isn't built yet, I think it's going to have to be reaching out to me individually. We really don't have a joint box or a website to go to. So just reach out to me at Emory, and I'm happy to make the connections I can and help to facilitate.
Thank you. And Aaron?
The best place to look for us is either at startmeatl.org or at startmeatl on various social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or also through GOISWA's website.
Great. And first, I want to thank everyone for the event today. Thank President Finvez for his comments, welcome everyone. And I just want to let you know that I hope you enjoyed our panelists today. Feel free to reach out to them in the areas that they have. And thank you for joining us. We hope you come back in the future.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being our moderator, Randy. Great job.
Yes, thank you.
Hope my mom's proud. That's all that matters.